Just 8 days left to cast a ballot, and another COVID crisis is sweeping the White House. 5 of Vice President Pence's aides testing positive for the coronavirus. But that's not stopping him or President Trump from hitting the campaign trail. The vice president is in Minnesota, while the president is making a play for battleground Pennsylvania with 3 different rallies in the state today. Here's what President Trump said at his first stop in Allentown.
Groundbreaking therapies and safe vaccines that quickly end the pandemic. It's ending anyway. We're rounding the turn. It's ending anyway. But the vaccines are going to be incredible. They'll be very quick. If somebody else were president, you'd get a vaccine in about 4 years from now. Normal life. That's what we want, right? Normal life. We want normal life. We just want normal life.
NBC News reporter Maura Barrett is in Martinsburg, Pennsylvania, the president's final stop in PA today. Maura, Martinsburg is in Blair County, where Trump won 70% of the vote in 2016. Pennsylvania could be a deciding factor in this race, but Trump is visiting places where he is likely to win again instead of toss-up counties. Why is that?
So, Allison, I think you and I and most of America know how much President Trump truly just loves being in front of a crowd. You can see behind me, we're nearly 2 hours out from the start of the event here in Martinsburg, and there's already thousands of people gathered. And the fact of the matter is, if he was going to counties where he didn't have this major, strong support, we wouldn't see these crowds. And obviously, back in 2016, Pennsylvania was decided by less than 1 percentage point. But it was counties like these, like Blair County with the 70% going for Trump, other rural counties that are very religious, more conservative counties in central western Pennsylvania that carried the state for President Trump. And so he's really hoping that if he can energize his base yet again and have those big margins, that will help him in the long run. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is taking the opposite approach. He's going to those battleground counties, the one where the race is tighter, because he's hoping he can shrink the margins. Because the reality is the race was separated by 44,000 votes back in 2016. 3 million more Pennsylvanians are registered than even voted back in 2016. So Joe Biden looking to capture new voters or voters who didn't come out last time in order to shrink those margins and go up against President Trump. So I'm not a campaign strategist, but clearly two very different opposing strategies here from the 2 candidates, Allison.
More Pennsylvania Republicans are going to the U.S. Supreme Court to challenge the extended deadline for mail-in ballots in the state. They want a ruling here before Election Day. We know Judge Amy Coney Barrett is expected to be confirmed to the Supreme Court tonight. What impact could she have here?
Well, this could be Judge Barrett's first major test after she's appointed to the Supreme Court. Because remember, this challenge to the ballot extension, basically the state Supreme Court had ruled that ballots can be counted up to 3 days after Election Day here in Pennsylvania. Republicans already took this to the U.S. Supreme Court, but they ruled that the state Supreme Court decision was upheld because there was a 4-4 tie. Adding in Amy Coney Barrett, she could be the breaking vote here. She said during her confirmation hearings that she'd have to consider whether or not she'd recuse herself on any cases that would be involving the election or President Trump, because she doesn't want to be biased based on who appointed her. But this would be the first real test that we'd see her in order to do that, let alone make a decision in the case. And poll watching in general is also something that the president has been really pushing here and is another case that we could see elevated to the Supreme Court. Take a listen to what President Trump said this morning in Allentown about how he really wants poll watching to be enabled as well.
So we have a venue and the governor that counts the ballots, right? The governor counts the ballots, and we're watching you, Governor, very closely in Philadelphia. We're watching you. A lot of bad things happen there with the counting of the votes. We're watching you, Governor Wolf, very closely.
So to clarify, President Trump, again, reiterating his stance about, quote, bad things happen in Philadelphia. The court's ruling twice now that poll watching cannot occur in Philadelphia at these early in-person satellite voting centers that happen. Campaigns do have the ability to have volunteer poll watchers register and get their licenses to do so on Election Day. But President Trump really hammering home that he wants the poll watching to begin now. So after we've seen this appeal twice now in state Supreme Court, I'm not sure if this is something that's going to be elevated to the U.S. Supreme Court. But again, if Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed, this could be yet another instance in which she has some pull.
Definitely a situation to watch there. Maura, we have to talk about COVID. The U.S. has recorded more new cases in the past week than at any other point in the pandemic. Yesterday, Chief of Staff Mark Meadows said, we're not going to control the pandemic. Here's Meadows trying to clarify those comments today.
Well, the only person waving a white flag along with his white mask is Joe Biden. I mean, when we look at this, we're going to defeat the virus. We're not going to control it. We will try to contain it as best we can. The white flag is certainly not in keeping with this president. You know him. He doesn't give up, and he's not going to give up until all Americans are safe and we've defeated this virus.
Quite frankly, Maura, that was a pretty confusing statement there. What are your sources saying about the administration's mixed messaging here?
Right, because that mixed messaging trickles down to the American people, and I think we find a lot of confusing stances even among voters. People here obviously not embracing mask wearing. A lot of the health officials' guidance that we've seen, they're blatantly refusing to not attend large gatherings, as you can see behind me. And so Joe Biden's campaign really pushing back on Mark Meadows' messaging there, because they're saying, you know, when Mark Meadows says that they're looking to defeat the virus but not control it, basically Joe Biden says we need to control it first in order to defeat it. And so the health officials that I've been speaking to are kind of in line with that messaging. They say first and foremost they need to avoid large gatherings, maintain your social distance, wear your masks, and obviously we see the president flouting those rules at every turn. So all around very confusing, but I think overall a lot of frustration from both health officials across the country I've been speaking to and those on Joe Biden's campaign.
Maura, Vice President Pence is on the trail today after he was in close contact with members of his staff who have tested positive for COVID. The White House has said Pence is an essential worker and he tested negative this morning. But according to the CDC guidelines, he should be quarantining. What is the campaign doing to ensure his safety and the safety of those around him today?
Well, it seems like Vice President Pence is really going on business as usual. The campaign sees how important it is for him to be out and about and connecting with voters. They just this afternoon announced more stops for the vice president this week, hitting states like Iowa and Nevada, where they're really trying to shore up support for the president. I think 4 stops in total were announced for the rest of the week. I will say, though, our reporter Amanda Golden, who's been following the vice president, has been traveling on Air Force 2 as the pool reporter, as the networks handle the shared responsibility of traveling and covering the vice president on these campaign events. And she did say that we've seen staff on the Air Force 2 wearing masks, maintaining better social distancing when possible. And Vice President Pence himself has been avoiding the typical rope line, interacting with voters, handshaking that we've seen him doing over the past couple of months. So he is clearly taking some sort of precautions in terms of protecting himself from people that he might not know where they've been. But all in all, he's still out on the trail on a very busy schedule in these final 8 days before the election. And obviously, as he's traveling state to state, that can be very concerning as he's interacting with voters, campaign staff, members of the press, as you know, they're trying to talk about maintaining and controlling this virus.
Maura, one last question on Vice President Pence. His office is saying that he is not expected to preside over the Supreme Court vote in the Senate tonight. Of course, that's the confirmation vote for Amy Coney Barrett. Have they said why?
No clear guidance on exactly why from the vice president's office, but it is important to note that right now Republicans are expected to have the votes 52 to 48 in order to confirm Amy Coney Barrett. And so in that case, the vice president's presence would not be necessary in order to break a tie. Of course, if anything changes with that and they do get closer to a tie for whatever reason, his office did say that things could change in terms of the vice president's attendance. But right now, that does not seem necessary.
All right, Maura Barrett covering all things presidential and vice presidential in Pennsylvania today. Thank you so much.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.